Welcome into TYT's A Conversation. It's your host, Adrian Lawrence. And today I have joining me Emmy-nominated documentary film producer and attorney, Andy Hale. Thanks so much for joining us, Andy.
Thanks for having me. Great to be here.
Yes, so I know you have extensive experience having Netflix documentaries and really capturing and captivating audiences as it concerns false convictions, when it concerns exonerations, a lot of wrongful incarcerations. And recently we saw the situation with Adnan Syed after he was released after 23 years of serving a life sentence for the murder of an ex-girlfriend. When you saw that he was released, what did it say to you?
Well, a couple things. Just when I heard the reasons why, and one of the reasons was Brady violations, meaning the state didn't turn over exculpatory evidence in their file, and in this particular case, evidence pertaining to, two alternative suspects. It makes you want to scream. I mean, to not turn things over, okay? And just to me, oh my God, it makes me crazy. That was the first thing. The second thing was I had listened to the Serial podcast way back in the day. And based on that, I can't remember all the details, but I was kind of like, I don't know, this guy kind of sounds like he's guilty. And then all this new stuff comes out about the case, and you're like, oh my God, there's so much more to the story. So I was really pretty surprised by the whole thing.
Yeah, I would imagine, especially an individual with your background who follows stories like this, who has a lot of experience in terms of civil rights matters and ensuring people are afforded justice, especially those who are wrongfully incarcerated and convicted. And so when we saw Syed be released, it really seemed like, I'm sure it was a breath of fresh air for him. But then when it comes to the system, and as you mentioned, the Brady violation and not turning over that exculpatory evidence, it doesn't necessarily make you feel safe that the justice system won't convict you wrongfully.
No, to me, it's actually, I've been lucky enough to get a few people out of prison. Cleve Heidelberg in Peoria after 47 years, and Terrence Haynes in Kankakee after 22 years. When they walk out the door, yeah, of course you're excited they're coming, they're free, but there's a huge sadness to me, right? Because it's a validation that this person, the system got it wrong. The person lost a huge chunk of their life. So when Adnan Syed, and he walked out, now he's not free yet. The state's got 30 days to decide if they're going to retry him or not. I'd be shocked if they're going to retry him. They're not retrying this guy. So he will be free soon. But you're happy for him, but at the same time, you're just incredibly, incredibly distraught over the fact that he lost 23 years of his life, especially the case, we have a lot of wrongful convictions where nobody did anything wrong. A witness got it wrong, maybe by an innocent mistake. That happens a lot. But in a case like this, where you've got Brady violations and you've got what looks to be like intentionally withholding conduct, documents, evidence that could prove other people were involved, not playing fair, having a motive, trying to basically fit a square peg in a round hole, that's when you just realize how scary it can be to be charged with something and how hard it is to prove your innocence.
Absolutely. No, that's definitely the feeling I had in terms of, yes, it's great that he's out. At the same time, this is really scary. It doesn't give you that much confidence in the system, especially when, as in this case here, they had exculpatory evidence. There were things out there that said you probably have the wrong guy, but they were so committed to making sure that they could pin the murder on someone. And this man seemed like he would be a great fit, and they went ahead and moved forward with it. And so those 23 years, as we know, can't come back.
No, and I think I got to give a shout out to the Undisclosed podcast and the work Sarah Simpson did. When I listened to one of her episodes about the audio tape of that interview of Jay Wilds, where he's getting coached, there's tapping on the table, there's long pauses. It is so clear to me, in my opinion, that those detectives knew this guy had no clue. They were feeding him a story, in my opinion, and you could see how non-reliable this guy was, and he was basically the state star witness. And I think I always say this. Too often times, detectives and state's attorneys don't just really, they want a conviction, right? They want to close the case, and there's a rush to judgment, and there's a decision made. I think this is the guy. My gut tells me this is the guy, and there's really no evidence to support it. And like you said just a minute ago, it is scary because it could happen to anyone.
Yeah, and as we know, it's definitely more likely to happen to the melanated people like myself, and it's incredibly.
That is true.
Yeah, I think it's worth 7 or 8 times more likely to be wrongfully convicted of murder.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I mean, I think that played a part in this case. I think it absolutely played a part in this case. They looked at this guy, they saw who he was, this Muslim guy with dark skin and ex-boyfriend. There's no evidence against Adnan Syed in the case. I mean, there was nothing. They built a case based on them thinking he was the guy. But I'm disappointed that, the way it played out, that the first narrative basically didn't tell you the whole story. And I think a lot of times it's great to shine a light on the case. Serial definitely did that. It shined a light on the case. But I think, it shined a little bit of an incomplete light on the case. And now you see how much more there is to the story. And you've got to really be careful if you're going to shine a light on it, that you really try to flush it out and tell the whole story,
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I'm wondering if there are going to be any repercussions in terms of punishment and penalty for those who were involved, who sped ahead with the case, regardless of the fact that there was exculpatory evidence and there was coaching. And I agree with you in terms of their star witness. Is anybody facing any kind of accountability?
Well, my prediction is this. My prediction is the state's I think this decision came down September 19th. 30 days would be October 19th. I think they're going to nollie-pros the case, which means they're going to dismiss it, which means the conviction is vacated and he's exonerated. I think you will see a lawsuit. You should see a lawsuit. That's what I think. Based on what I know, I think there's going to be a lawsuit. And that is something that if his lawyers, who know a lot more about the case than me, if they feel like it has merit, that is the vehicle you use to try to bring attention to the case, to have accountability to the case, to try to make people do their jobs.
Yeah, and that's something that definitely needs to happen. And it kind of does suck that they even have to file a lawsuit as opposed to the state taking its own initiative to hold itself accountable. No, it makes you have to, rally everything together and to go through the system again, a system that has wronged you.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, like Illinois, for instance, we have by statute, you can apply for something called a certificate of innocence and you can get state compensation. The problem is in most states, it's not much money. So in Illinois, I think the cap is like $275,000. So I mean, that's not compensation for 23 years in prison, Other times, I mean, it depends what, the city of Baltimore would do. Sometimes cities just settle cases if they feel like the case has merit, so they don't have a big legal fight. But I'll be very curious to see how this plays out from here.
Yes, as will I. The thing is, we definitely are very grateful to have attention to be placed on this case and for it to ultimately end up with his freedom at the same time. It really does show you that the system is not working as it is supposed to work. But in terms of the work that you're doing, are you working on anything in particular right now?
Yeah, I'm going through a case where I'm representing a gentleman, Chester Weger. He's 83 years old. He got convicted of the Starved Rock murders in 1960. He spent over 60 years in prison. It would be, I believe, we have strong evidence of his innocence. Your timing's perfect. I dropped off all my evidence with the state's attorney's office today. And we're trying to prove his innocence. And if we do, and I think we will, it would by far be the longest conviction in US history. And another incredibly tragic, sad case.
That is very sad, but I'm glad to hear that there is a possibility for the truth to just radiate and emanate from the courthouse steps. That would be grand. And so I know all the work that you do is extremely important. And what do you think is going to happen next now that you turned over all the evidence? I guess what's the next step?
The next step would be for me to have a meeting with the state's attorney's office. I'm hoping they do the right thing and vacate the conviction. If they say no, which I hope they don't, I'll have to file something with the court. And again, like you said, then it'll be another battle for years. I did a whole long podcast about it called The Starved Rock Murders with Andy Hale, 17 episodes, 16 or 17 episodes. We took a deep dive into the case because there was an HBO special on the case in December, which told a little bit of the story, shined a little bit of a light on it, but not in a deep dive way. And so we did a podcast to bring attention to the case. And then it also helped me develop tips and more information. And we're at a point now where we have really, I think, just completely dismantled the state's case against Chester Weger after all this time.
Wow. That's a very powerful thing. And I'm excited to see where the case goes. And hopefully you will get the results of exoneration, because that would be absolutely and utterly fantastic. And if there are people out there who want in your journey, where can they get information?
Andy Hale at Hale and Monaco. Andy at halemonaco.com is my email address, and my Twitter is Andy M Hale ESQ. So I always tell people I'm all ears. If anybody out there thinks they know somebody who's wrongfully convicted, I'd love to hear about it.
Thank you, Andy. Thank you so much for sharing your voice and your knowledge with us today, as well as for all the work that you do.
Anytime.